talk to me like I'm three. What is it that the space elevator does and what problem does it solve?
Yeah, the space elevator has started off in science fiction. Arthur C. Clarke wrote about it. What it does is it's essentially a ribbon, a cable. One end attached to Earth and the other end 100,000 kilometers, 60,000 miles up in space. And you can take a climber, grab onto that ribbon, like the one behind me, and grab onto it and climb your way up to orbit. So you don't need a rocket. You don't need anything else. So it's more like a vertical railroad, a train that goes from Earth to space. And what it really solves is, if you watch the rocket launches, they're really great. You know, lots of noise, lots of explosion, lots of sound. But if you look at the rocket, you've got this huge rocket. And when it's actually sending to space, the valuable part is the little tiny piece up at top. For example, the Starship that launched the other day, it's got 5,600 tons of fuel, 5,600 tons of fuel. And it's going to put 100 tons into low Earth orbit, which is a couple hundred miles up. So that's the lowest orbit, just above the atmosphere. You know, it's 2% of the rocket is actually your payload. And the other 98% is fuel and things to hold the fuel. So the space elevator solves all of that by, we launch more like 50%. So we've got a climber that clamps onto the ribbon and runs up, and half of that is payload. We send the power up from lasers down on Earth up to basically solar cells, photovoltaics, on the underside of the climber. We're not using all that fuel. What it does is it drops our prices. Right now, it'll cost you $10,000 to put an object into geosynchronous orbit. With the space elevator,
Right.
it would cost you $200. If you wanted to go up to geosynchronous or to the moon or Mars, just to send you with no food, no air, no wall around you to protect you from space, would cost roughly,
Right.
bare minimum, at least $500,000. Now, to put your food, air, and something for you to be in, it's going to be at least 10 times that, even if you've got structures on the moon and Mars. So you're talking millions of dollars to send a person to the moon or Mars, easily. Whereas if you've got the space elevator, now you'll reduce that by a factor
Right. So
of
it's
50.
it's tremendous
So now
money
you're
saved.
Oh, yes, dramatic amount. Plus the other thing, you've been in an elevator, and you walk in and you stand there and you push the button and it goes up. Now, imagine that elevator being bigger, more like a room, having a table in it, windows on the side, and you could get up, walk around, talk to your friends, you know, have dinner, whatever. And the trip would be fairly nice and calm. That's what the space elevator would be as well. It would take you up just like that.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you about that, because that's really fascinating to me. When I think about an elevator, I think about something like this might be a freight elevator, right? So in my mind, when you talk about using an elevator, are you as a person holding on to something? Are you out exposed to the sky? Or like, paint the picture of what that looks like, right? You're in a box maybe that's pulled up.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about it is like a train.
Okay.
It's a vertical railroad. So take a train track and go from laying down to sticking straight up into the sky. Now, sitting in it, you know, putting a train car on that and sitting in there would be, so you got to redesign the train car. But inside the car, it would be like a small sort of building, and each floor would be somebody sitting in it, doing things. You may have a restaurant. There's no, you know, you could have it sort of the size of a large room if you wanted to, and have a bunch of people sitting in there. There are no restrictions on the size of it, but it's like a train trip. So if you take a nice train
Very
trip,
casual,
you know, across country, same sort of deal. You go to the dining car, you go to the sleeping car, hang out, stare out the window. And it's not, if you've seen people on rockets, they have their fillings checked afterward. Because you get on the rocket, it's many G's, which is many, it's a violent shaking type of thing. That's why there's quite often been restrictions on the ages, health, of astronauts, of people that go up. Because it's not a gentle ride. The space elevator,
Okay.
when it starts going, you may not even notice. You may look out the window and all of a sudden see
Right.
you're 100 miles off the surface of the Earth, that you're entering space. They're 20 to 30 times stronger than anything else that's ever
Wow.
been made. They're just ridiculously strong.
What I'm envisioning is a world where I'm looking out my window right now and I see almost like ribbons looking like from a distance going up into the sky, maybe one per every city. I don't know. But that would be the train track, to your point, or the cable that essentially uses Earth's orbits to bring the tension, like have it be pulling itself up and kind of go on a cyclical motion, right? And that's what brings people or things directly vertical up, and then it goes into low Earth orbit. Is that right?
Yes, it's like if you took a ball on a string and you just spun it around, the string would stick straight out and the ball would be flying around your hand. Well, it's the same thing. If you take Earth and you're spinning it, which Earth is spinning, and you run a cable out from it, 100,000 kilometers, 60,000 miles, and you put a weight on the end of it, it'll sit out there, just like the ball on the string. But if you're an ant at the bottom of it, you would see the string going straight up from you. And, the world turning around you. Same thing with the space elevator. Us standing here on Earth, we look straight up the ribbon and go, why is it staying there?
Right.
But if you're looking from the outside, it looks very obvious what's happening. And the reality of it, right now, 100 years from now, the elevator will look like something common, and it'll be used to go to the cities on Mars or on Moon or cities in orbit. Okay. But for initially, the first one, what we get out of it is, yes, you can go build a station in orbit. You can do manufacturing. People can go do tourism, stuff like that. Okay. But in reality, what we'll probably be doing with the first elevator are building space-based solar power system, which are square miles of solar arrays in space that collect up energy endlessly, unlimited, and beam it down to any location on the planet. So you've got clean, unlimited energy at a reasonable price that you can distribute anywhere.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
you've got electricity from space. The other is we'll go to the asteroids, and instead of tearing the hell out of some beautiful area of Earth, we'll go to asteroids, which is basically a clump of rocks, grab the rocks, send them back to Earth, and mine the asteroids for a bunch of the elements that we are running short of here on Earth. And that's where I think we're first going to be going with the elevator, because that's a real critical thing. I consider that much higher priority than having Quidditch matches in orbit kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't know, though. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so I'm a little biased. What is cool about all this is it's cool that you're a Harry Potter fan, actually. It to me is all very much like magic, like what we talked about. All of this is. It seems so surreal, but it is actually part of our potential reality. It's very real that we could have a ribbon, very strong ribbon, basically carry us and things to what we perceive as vertical, going up. And then it's doing so by the force of, energy, more or less pulling it through the Earth's rotation. And just the consciousness of that is a little bit wild to think about, because what that really means is that suddenly our perception of what our world is or what we have access to suddenly gets a lot taller, and more accessible, and just more to me, it seems more magical. I don't know. It's like cheesy to say, but that's just how I see it. How long do you think it might take for one to go at its optimal speed, for one to go from, middle of Denver all the way up to, let's say, the first station up there that it would land on?
Well, yes, that's part of it. Space is a big thing. If you're going up to where the International Space Station is, that's a couple 100 miles. It'll take you an hour, kind of thing, maybe 2 hours as you're just starting out. But the deal is you're not in orbit. The space elevator holds you above the Earth. If you jump off at the height of the International Space Station, you would fall back down to Earth because you're not in orbit. So where we're actually going to be going is up to geosynchronous, which is a much more valuable orbit. If you climb up the space elevator and you let go at the right time, it will have enough speed that it will throw you all the way to the moon, all the way to Mars, all the way to Mars, all the way to the asteroids. It has that much speed at the upper end. Evil.
Oh, I get. So what you're saying, the momentum is so great that it could propel you forward so far. Gotcha.
The other thing about that is that the elevator, when you go up it has so much speed, it has so much energy that you can launch yourself to Mars, for example, pretty much any time. You just climb up and you let go at the right time and it'll throw you toward Mars. But the thing is, they don't always emphasize this when they talk about building colonies on Mars, for example. When you use a rocket to go to Mars, the launch windows are about 2 weeks wide every 2 years because of the limits of the energy on the rocket. The space elevator doesn't have that. So about 9 months out of the year, you can just go up the elevator and get thrown right to Mars. Right. And you can actually get there a lot faster than you can with rocket.
What kind of pushback have you been seeing? I imagine that people are thinking, wow, this ribbon, this would break. What if it breaks? Something like that. Or what if the cargo falls off? Or is it possible for it to go off of the tracks, as I've been saying? I'm not sure if that's proper terminology, but something like that. What does that mean? You have to build space stations on low Earth orbit and low Earth orbit first to then build this, so it has a landing place. All those different things. Yes.
Yeah, there's lots of different scenarios. It would obviously be built such that falling off of it would be extremely difficult. Yeah, we don't want that to happen. And if you did, depending on where you were, you would either go into orbit, or if you're down near the bottom, you'd fall back down to Earth. This is the ribbon. And this is as thin as paper, and it weighs about 20 pounds per, 20 pounds per kilometer, per mile kind of thing. And so if it fell down on you, if you happen to be standing there and it fell down on you, it would be lighter than like newsprint. So it'd be comparable to newspaper hitting you on the head. A single sheet of newspaper.
That's really fantastic, honestly, that we have something that you're saying that is stronger than steel, thinner, or as thin as paper.
Yes. This ribbon, as thin as paper, made out of carbon nanotubes, can hold up at least 50 tons.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
It's that strong. So we're going to put climber on there that weighs about 20 tons, a fraction of that, and then it can run up the ribbon without breaking it. But if it breaks, there's no destruction. Nothing really happens to it.
It's not like things implode or anything. It's it's relatively
no, it's big. It's not anywhere nearly as exciting as the science fiction movies. They make wonderfully exciting.
That's a good thing for real life. I think we're okay with that for real life. Honestly, I am. Personally, good with that outcome. I believe China is now doing a space elevator. Is that right?
The Japanese announced some years ago that they're planning to build it by 2050, and actually, I've talked with them a number of times. And China has now announced that they're planning to build one, but their time frame is similar. I think they said 2045, but it could be 2050. But in reality, we have everything to build it right now.
Right.
And we could have one up and operational in 8 years.
How do you envision the world looking internationally? this were implemented in the next 100 years? What do you think that looks like?
There's a couple of aspects of it. One, we'll build up 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 ribbons, and we'll build them up nice and strong. But the space elevator is fragile, meaning if somebody really gets upset with you and they decide to take a jet and fly it through your ribbon, they're going to destroy it. So in my personal opinion, you have to build a space elevator in a way that everybody has a stake in it. Everybody gets something out of it. If you're going to build up solar power satellites to provide energy, it needs to provide energy to most of the planet. So everybody has a stake in it. If you're going to go mine the asteroids, you probably need to bring back the minerals and metal and sell them or whatever to most of the planet. Right. So everybody gets something back from it. If you start doing that, it would actually, the space elevator could actually be something to help sort of calm political tensions instead of create them, because everybody has a stake in the space elevator. Sure. Everybody's growing sort of economically together. If you do that, you could easily have 5 very large elevators. You could have an elevator on Mars. It's actually easier to build one on Mars. You could have elevators on the asteroids, which are very easy to build it on. And you could have a city on Mars within 100 years without question. A large domed city, as many people as you want. I don't know the economic benefits really of doing it there on Mars, but you can if you want. There would probably be a large station in Earth orbit, high Earth orbit, for manufacturing, for communications, for maintenance of the solar power satellites, things like that. We're off on Mars, we're on the moon, and then we start figuring out what the value is. Radio observatories on the dark side of the moon. Maybe some minerals in the deep caverns or lava tubes under Mars. And sort of skimming helium-3 off of Jupiter, for example, or fusion power.
There's so much that we don't know that we could use because we haven't been able to access it yet in the way that we need to, rate that we needed to.
Well, if we get moving, we could deploy the initial ribbon 6 years from now. And then we'd be sending climbers up it to make that from a small ribbon up to the size of the one behind me. And that'll take another couple of years. So we're talking about, realistically about 9-10 years from now to really have it up and operational. We'll have delays. There's delays in getting funding, delays in regulations. And so, but 10 years, my kids will just be getting into their, they'll be in their 20s, and ideal for them. So, now it's sort of, what can you do from that point?